From the battlefield to the home front, people both young and old united behind the war effort.
I think it was right because Germany was capturing all of those other countries over there. And it was about ready to take hold of Berlin, England, and get it under its control. And then pretty soon you get all of those built up, they'd be over here. That was a war that should have been.
I never heard anybody say, well, we shouldn't be fighting this war. They really felt that Hitler was evil, Hitler needed to be stopped, and so was Mussolini and Japan, for the sake of freedom.
It was that ideal of freedom that spawned a nationwide effort to win the war. On the home front, people made do with less, or they did without. Rationing became the accepted norm, and massive collecting efforts in towns and cities across the country helped equip and arm the men overseas.
Patriotism was stirred up by not only by the collecting effort, the purchasing of war bonds, the work in the defense plants. Of course, the wages were extremely high in the defense plants in Elmira, precisely. I'm sure they were all other places, but that was my exposure. In fact, they sent buses around to pick up people, so they didn't have to use their precious gas to drive to and from Elmira, from Mansfield. The bus came in the morning and it brought them back at night. It was also evident we had pins, we had stickers, posters were in the theaters, in the Twain Theater, I remember in Mansfield. There was appropriate posters that to keep your lip buttoned, that some of the information you might give out that you had heard, the wrong person might hear it, and it would in turn help the enemy sink a ship. And they really psyched people up to be responsive to this worldwide war. And I think it worked. And I remember one time, another patriotic procedure, Gerson and Myers clothing store on the corner of Main and Wellsboro Street had a whole window full of soldiers, sailors, burnt Marines from the Mansfield area that were in service, and they displayed their pictures. And I remember going up from the high school at noontime, and we'd stand there and look at the boys' pictures to see which one was the best looking. Of course, being a young high school girl, that was another thing that was on our mind. Or to wear a pair of wings or some pin that some soldier might give you or have sent you. And I think that was not just a girlish thing. I think it was a form of patriotism, because we were really into it. We always knew we'd win the war. We knew. We were that positive that no way would the Americans be beat in either theater at any expense.
That sense of pride, coupled with Yankee ingenuity, was operating overseas as well.
We needed the repair parts, and there was no way to get them. We either got a complete carburetor or nothing, and it meant that we could repair 1 out of 3, and the other 2 were theoretically junk, but nothing wrong except the simple little part that was worn out. Because I had watched my father do molding when I was a child, the idea came to me that I could make those parts if I could find a way of making them accurate enough that they would do their job. And so after quite some time of experimenting, I produced a mold that I was able to cast 8 pieces at a time. When they come out of the mold, they were drilled and ready to go on to the carburetor. And during the remainder of the war, those parts put 600 generators back into service that otherwise would have been junk. And later, they were requisitioned by the company that went in on the Anzio invasion and also the southern France invasion.
That sense of making do with what was available at the time was evident for Bill Wainick as well, when a pitchfork became a weapon during his escape from the Germans. In March 1945, after a failed attempt by Patton's troops to break out the officers from Auflag 13C, Wainick and his fellow prisoners began a 2-month forced march across Germany.
The 1st of May, it snowed, and it was quite heavy snow, but it did not pile up, it melted. Well, we got together, 14 of us. We'd planned this. We were tired of being marched, and we were going to pull and escape. The whole column knew we were going to escape, except the Germans, so they stretched the column. The column spraggled way out to cover a couple miles. We were in the center. As we went around this corner in this old country road, we could see a farmhouse and a barn. And then there was a curve right behind it. I said to the boys, there's our barn right there. We knew we were going in the barn. As we came to that, the 14 of us just slipped right in the barn, got in the haymow, laid right there. As the column moved on, we came down from the barn. We had no weapons, so we gathered up the pitchforks around. Now we had weapons because we knew the Germans would come back and look for us. They did. They came back to look for us, the captain and 4 enlisted men, and with our crew with pitchforks at the door. When the Germans came to the door, they yanked the door open and met them with the pitchforks, and the Germans dropped their rifles and put their hands up.